Welcome to the Soul of the War. My name is Alexis Branch, and today for our candidate spotlight, we will be interviewing David Grogan, candidate for sheriff. Welcome.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Of course, of
Yes,
course.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We're just going to jump right into it.
Absolutely. Let's get right in it.
Tell me about yourself. Tell me, how did you grow up, where you grew up, what's family life like?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a proud lifetime Prince Georgian. I grew up in Glass Manor. I call myself a Glass Manor man in Oxon Hill. I went to Oxon Hill High School. Of course, we have a proud Clipper family. And after graduation from high school, I joined the Marine Corps, so I'm also a veteran, a Marine. Proud. 1 month after I graduated from high school, I went to Paris Island to become a United States Marine.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, you're quite welcome. From there, I became a proud Bowie State Bulldog.
Hey.
A Bowie State Bulldog, and so I was a part of the transition from a football program that was lacking to a powerhouse football program that we have today. And while at Bowie State, I actually started my law enforcement career as a student at Bowie State.
Wow.
I did, yes. I was a full-time student. I was a captain of the football team. I worked for the Secret Service 1 semester and worked for the Department of Justice, U.S. Marshal, another semester. And so that's where it all began. I began recruiting students back then. 35 years later, still informally recruit students from Bowie State and from other HBCUs.
And support students that are there.
And support students that are there. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So, currently serving on the Bowie State National Alumni Association Executive Board. And so I still give back, and I love both of my alma maters, Oxon Hill, Bowie State, and I just I'm very proud of that. But I do family as far as family life. I have one daughter. She is 23 years old, who lives with me, still live with me, on and off. She did a little van life, exploring. She has driven her van across the country and back, and so she's taking a little break from her van, right? But I have one daughter, several god kids. I love kids as far as family life. I've probably got over 12 or so god kids, a number of children that I have helped raise. And so I've always enjoyed children. I've been in our schools. I enjoy schools. My grandmother was actually an educator professionally. My mom was a scholar. I feel somewhere in between, and so I've always enjoyed education.
You did substitute teaching as well for a while,
I
right?
did,
Awesome.
yeah. When I retired in 2013, one of the first roles I took on, because I've always enjoyed teaching, and I've been going to schools for career days and different things like that, honors programs, keynote speaking programs, different things. Been doing that for over 30 years. A lot of the schools, their counselors have my number on speed dial for years, for different things.
For different reasons, right?
And so I took a stab at being a substitute teacher, and I tell you, it was an eye-opener. I really had, and most people have no idea, and I would humorously joke with the teachers and tell them that I didn't realize how easy my profession was. My profession was very easy, and it was a lucrative profession compared to the school is tough, and people have no idea.
Well, let me say this. I 100% believe what you're saying because
Yeah.
I physically have seen your service.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to any event in Prince George's County, it's a very rare occasion that you are not there
Absolutely.
helping out, doing something.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
just thank you for that. Thank you for
Absolutely.
consistently having my back
Yes.
in any of my endeavors when it comes to politics and
Yeah.
just trying to find my way in this thing of life. And I genuinely appreciate that, and I am
Absolutely.
grateful to call you my friend.
Absolutely. I
Genuinely.
remember when I
So,
first met you.
yeah.
After about 15 minutes, I was sold. What sold me when you told me, you explained to me that you had defeated the incumbent. I say, whoa, okay. And you said, well, nobody's going to outwork me. I said, Lord, man, my hashtag is go hard or go home.
And I believe that. I
Yeah.
don't think I was outworked. I just think that I was outnumbered.
You were outnumbered. Absolutely. You certainly weren't outworked.
Yeah.
So you fit the profile of Bowie bold, go boldly, and I said, wow, I gave you my word that first day after 15 to 20 minutes of talking to you
Yeah.
that I had your back, and I was going to do everything I
Thank
could
you.
to help you, and I tried to
And
do
you've
that.
done that to this day. So
Yes.
thank you for even you just being on the show. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Moving forward, you know that we do talk about faith on the show.
Sure.
And what has been your experience when it comes to faith? How has faith guided you throughout your life and gotten you to becoming the man that you are today?
Sure. That's a great question, Alexis. I think as we look at faith now, I really continue to explore this because I didn't grow up in the church. My mom believed in faith, and my mom taught us faith. It was my mom's second marriage, my stepfather. They had an interesting relationship because my stepfather went to church every Sunday, every faithfully, but my mom didn't. And I, as a young person, as a kid, I didn't necessarily understand that. But my mom would always say, I pray, I pray for you and my grandkids, different things like that, and she would say prayer. So I've always been a deeply spiritual person. Always, and I still to this day operate off the spirit. I do things that my spirit tells me.
Amen.
Sometimes you may see my lives on Facebook, social media, and I go on live just because I'm spiritually driven to talk about, I think more recently, talking about health. People are dying from suicide, and the suicide rate is just unbelievable. And so mental health awareness is one of my other diehard passions.
Absolutely.
And so my spirit drove me to say, look, I got to have this conversation. I don't know if it's for me or if it's for my audience.
Absolutely.
But I'm hoping that somebody would get something out of it. So I've always enjoyed church. And one of the things I did as a candidate, I have what's called a Real Man's Pray Tour. And what we do is trying to encourage men to go to church. And so when I'm invited to church, I'm invited on the 13th to First Baptist of Highland Park. And whenever I get an invitation to a church, I set it up as an event and invite all the men I can think of and tell them, y'all come join me. Because I do think that men, not to be chauvinistic, but I do think that we've got to activate men on so many different levels, especially the spirituality. We've got to get men engaged. And so that's one of my other passions also.
That is very, very real.
Yeah.
I'm not going to elaborate on that anymore. We can talk a little bit more offline. But I do think that with the last part in which you said that men definitely need to get more in the church, especially my generation. What would you say is your experience in law enforcement?
So it's two part. How I came into law enforcement, I had an exceptional experience. I really did. And to this day, I still believe in the noble profession. Because as I said, I started as a student. And when I was a student with the Secret Service, I had a great mentor with the Secret Service. The director of the Secret Service, his name was John R. Simpson. He took me under his wing. And I was a student at Bowie, and I tell you, there was no greater feeling to have somebody that was so proud of me. And everywhere we went, we used to go to the White House, and everybody, he had a photographic memory. I admire that about him, too, because my memory is not that great. So everybody he passed, it doesn't matter whether it was some technician or engineer or anything, he remembered everybody's names.
Wow.
And then he would introduce me as his future Secret Service agent. And, just imagine being a student, a young person with that. You'll never forget that.
Yeah. And someone believing in you like that.
Like that.
Yeah.
And then even I worked in the public affairs office, and the public affairs office was all ladies. And so the ladies, I'll never forget when I left, they gave me this nice plaque, but then it was a big building at headquarters, and I was single at the time. I was a student. And so I never told this story, Alexis. I have never, people who probably hear this for the first time. But one of the gifts they gave me for my farewell party was a date book with Dave Grogan. It said, David, just whoever you see around the building that you like, let us know who it is. And then and I've never told this story, but we were like family. And then on the Marshal Service, it was the same thing. The ladies at the Marshal Service took me under their wing, and then I was a student, and I learned all the different administrative jobs, because it got to the point where if people needed leave, I could fill in any of the jobs, different, government have different title jobs, big titles, and, you can just teach somebody how to do these things. And so I had become somebody that could do any of those jobs. We were like a family. It was just unbelievable. The older guys, treated me like their sons, and, sometimes I would be tired and let me go to sleep. Sometimes I got to study, and then they would give me these real life experiences. I probably had more physical activity, and I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I probably had more physical activity with law enforcement as a student, helping them out, because I'm supposed to be on the scene watching. But there'd come times when we get out there fighting with mental health patients.
Yeah.
And then I would be like the referee. I would watch, and if I feel like, okay, they about to get the best of it, I would step in.
Yeah.
I would step in and get people, because when you go, see, people don't realize when people leave a mental health institute, they issue warrants for them just like a wanted person. And then so they're very dangerous because they've already been identified as a mental health, and that makes them dangerous. So they literally can almost do anything because they're cleared. And so it's very dangerous when you go after mental health patients. But those are, I used to go out there with them, and then the family members will start to fighting because they don't want their loved one to go back to St. Elizabeth.
Or get hurt.
And then I would watch, and I go, okay, let me.
I think that's awesome that you've had that experience with mental health patients, though, when it comes to law enforcement, because I think that makes you unique in this race.
You wouldn't believe this. I used to work for a company that's based next door.
So Tim Adams did too.
Interdynamics.
Wow, what are the odds? Everyone has worked in this.
I used to be the vice president for government relations.
Wow.
For a behavioral health firm.
Wow, what are the odds? What are the odds? This is a popular building.
It is.
So here at the Soul of the War, we really strive ourselves on educating the public in the most simplest ways so that a second grader could understand what's going on in their backyard when it comes to politics. Can you explain to me what makes the sheriff's office different from other law enforcement offices?
Yes, this is so critical, Alexis. It's so critical because policing and law enforcement and politics, period, is so complex because we didn't get this education in school. And so one of the things, let me just share this with you. I have a coloring book. It's called The Sheriff, Your Sheriff, Your Friend. And it's a coloring book for the kids. And in this coloring book, it helps kids understand what the role of the sheriff is. And the kids, when I ran in 2018, I mean, the schools was calling. We probably dropped about 15,000 of those over the different schools.
Whoa.
Yeah, the coloring books, because again, I believe in education. I think one of our downfalls is that we've got decades and decades and generations of people that we never got the basic civic education. So then now we become adults. And we're afraid to admit that, well, how would you know what a delegate is, and how would you know the sheriff versus the marshal versus the police versus security? But the sheriff, in a nutshell, the best way to explain the sheriff, one, the sheriff is an elected. There's only one sheriff elected in Prince George's County, elected by the people. The people that work at the sheriff's department are considered deputy sheriffs. They're hired through government employment, local government employment. The sheriff's office is a service to the courts. The courts is the judges, different things like that. So a warrant, for an example, the judge issues a warrant, that goes to the sheriff's department. The deputy sheriffs go out and execute the warrant. The judge issue a notice for eviction, it goes to the sheriff's department. Summons, protective orders. So it's a whole big, massive operation. It sounds simple, but it's a very busy operation with all kinds of things that come out of the courts that come from judges. And the sheriffs, they execute them. Now the difference is that the sheriff is a full-fledged law enforcement agency. So the deputy sheriffs can do police work.
Yes.
Because in some towns, there is no police. The sheriff is the police. The sheriffs have a broader authority. So the sheriffs can do police work, but police can't do the sheriff's work because right. And that's the way the difference is.
Definitely taught me something.
Yeah.
Definitely taught me something.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. How would you say you got into politics?
I got into politics very early, mid-level in my career while I was Deputy U.S. Marshal. And to make the comparison, the sheriff is elected by the people. The U.S. Marshal for every district is appointed by the president.
Wow.
And Frederick Douglass was your first black U.S. Marshal. People don't know that.
Whoa.
Yeah, he was appointed by Rutherford B. Hayes.
Wow.
And all law enforcement started from the marshal. The marshal would appoint Dave Grogan. Dave Grogan would deputize Alexis Branch to collect taxes, John Doe to deal with guns, but now you have somebody else to deal with drugs. Now you have DEA, FBI, ATF, and all these different law enforcement agencies. But when the president appointed the marshal back in those days, Frederick Douglass, the president wasn't comfortable with the security, and that's where he created the Secret Service. And so I became interested in the presidential appointed U.S. Marshal back in the early 2000s. And I applied for the first time at the White House back in, I think, 2002. And have applied several times to be the U.S. Marshal. And then when I retired, when candidate Hillary Clinton didn't win, when we thought she was going to win, during the time I was retiring, I decided that I would learn about local politics because I didn't know anything about it. That's what I know most people don't. I think back to where I was in 2012. If you had asked me, David, who are your delegate? No idea. Who's your senator? I ran against Senator Doug Peters. I didn't never heard of him before. And I, learned quickly that, I was running against a powerful operation. I wasn't running against Doug Peters. I was running against a system.
Yeah.
And so, but I didn't know.
Oh, we're going to talk about that, the
Yeah.
system. One thing, can you do me a favor? Can you look at the camera and can you what is some advice you can give to young black people that may come encounter with racism in a traffic stop? If you could just say a quick 3 things, 30 seconds of advice that could potentially save a black person's life.
Absolutely. First of all, never second guess on the scene whether you think a traffic stop is bad. You already know if something has gone bad. Once you realize something has gone bad, then it's up to you to say you'll deal with that at another time. The best advice, if you feel like something is going wrong, you have the right to get the name and the badge number of an officer politely, professionally, but what you don't want to do is get into a confrontation with a law enforcement officer who may be mentally unstable. And if you assume that the people may be mentally unstable, you don't want to get into confrontation with them because you do want to go back home to your family. So it's best to comply, don't create a fight, and just, if there's a problem, deal with it later on that day or the next day.
Amen. Who will be that point of contact?
The point of contact, it depends. If it's a sheriff's department, you would just call your local sheriff. If it's a local police, you call the local police because, trust me, if you make a report to a law enforcement manager and then you escalate it up, it will eventually be dealt with.
Thank you. Thank you for that. In Philadelphia, they no longer do minor traffic stops to cut down on negative interactions with police. Is this something you would consider fighting for, and what are some of your plans to reduce such unwarranted interactions?
Wow. Yeah, I spoke on a TV show. I was a commentator, I think, with one. I forgot, do so many of them, I forget the name of it, but we talked about that. I didn't even realize that until they brought it to my attention. I fully support getting the police away from minor traffic stops. Until we get to the point where people feel comfortable with the police and we have trained officers who know the difference between a traffic stop versus a felony warrant, because there's a different approach when it comes to approaching a felon versus somebody's headlight is out. And then when you pull behind them and you run their tags, you have everything you need about them. And so I support getting police away from minor traffic stops. You can send tickets to people, but to put the officer and to put that person in danger based on the climate we're in right now, I would fully support.
And these are conversations that you would be willing to have with your fellow deputy sheriffs?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Do you agree with the retractment of the Police Bill of Rights?
Yes.
You do?
I do.
Okay. What would you do to assist the community in reducing the crime in the area?
Yeah. Reducing crime in the area, I do it now. I have open discussions with different groups. I belong to a number of different groups. And Next Door is one of the groups I'm involved with. We have 31 communities. And it can be a little challenging because you don't know who you're talking to. And I left a message today about, we talk about crime. Public safety is a hot issue in Bowie.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, I opened up dialogue about public safety. Some people started attacking me. Wait a minute, we don't have a public safety problem here.
Bowie's so diverse that you're going to get that.
Yeah, and so I think it's important for me as your next sheriff to continue open dialogues, be accessible to having discussions with community organizations. And it's important, I think what's most important is that everyone knows who their sheriff is.
Absolutely.
That's why I put in the work that I do. There's no secret that I'm very active on every form of social media. You can find me anywhere. You can text me. I'm on IG. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. And that's intentional.
Yes.
Because in any functional community, the people know who their sheriff is. If you ask the
Very
average
true.
person here, they have no idea who the sheriff is.
Very true.
How are you going to hold a law enforcement agency accountable and you don't know who the head of it
That is very, very, very true. With it being such a shortage in not just, the police force, but in everything, what will you do to recruit people to work for the sheriff's department?
Alexis, the day I take over as your sheriff, I won't have a problem recruiting.
Okay.
My phone will be ringing off the hook. People will be coming from all over the place. I will be able to recruit for the sheriff's department, the police department, and I can recruit. So many people have worked for me. 23 out of my 25 years, I've been a manager. And ever since I've retired, I've been managing armed security federal government contracts. And so when I leave one contract, my employees still call and follow me, David, where you going, what you doing? So recruiting will not be an issue. Recruiting is an issue is because we don't trust law enforcement.
Yeah.
When you have someone from the community that people trust, young people love these jobs.
Yes.
I've been going to school for years, and I rarely have I ever left the elementary school that everybody, little person, that wanted to be law enforcement. And then boys are natural protectors. So I don't see recruiting. Recruiting would be the last of my issues and worries.
That's awesome and so comforting to hear. I wonder, do you have any take on like tackling drag racing here in Prince George's County?
I grew up going to drag racing.
But not just on like the regular streets.
Yeah, it's. I think we have a problem with that in Bowie. I notice when I go to bed at night, it sounds like a
All
drag
of
race.
Crane Highway is an issue.
This is a police issue.
Okay.
We have got to. I think that we have gotten too shy from actual policing. When you look at the accidents on the roads, the beltways, the racing, what has happened is that now people have a total disregard for the law. And so when you have a functional police department, if you start dealing with some of the minor things, you will deal with the things that have escalated. But right now, I think people have no respect for the roads. They have no respect for the law. But I think we can turn that around.
Awesome.
I think we can turn that around.
There were some things floating around last time you ran for office surrounding domestic violence. Would you like to address those allegations at this time?
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm also not only a mental health awareness advocate, I'm also a domestic violence, anti-domestic violence advocate. And so I was shocked in 2018 when I ran that some folks started floating some idea that I had somehow had domestic violence in my background. I said, wait a minute, I had a top secret clearance for 30 years, over 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Post-retirement, I've been managing federal government billion-dollar contracts. The likelihood of me having domestic violence in my background is slim to none. But I think that the people who were responsible for that, I think that one, they were trying to help their candidate, because when you become a threat in any kind of political race, you're going to face attack. That's unfortunately a part of this. Attacks is one thing, large and false allegations against somebody is something different. Those were false allegations lodged against me with information that they had found on Maryland search, because they couldn't find no other dirt on me, so they had to create it. And so they found some information on Maryland search that back when my daughter was a child, her and the mother had some differences, and I've got a protective order taken out on me because I was sending my daughter too many text messages. Okay. Too many pleasantries. To this day, I send her nice pleasantries and affirmations, and you probably get some of my next.
I do.
I've always been like that. I believe you start your day off with something positive.
So, you should.
And so I've always done.
And they help. Yeah. So thank you.
I've always done that, and so, but somehow that got turned into I was harassing.
And that's unfortunate.
And it was thrown out. But the idea that a judge in Prince George's County would issue a protective order, alleging that harassment.
Yeah.
So, but that's what that came from, and I think that again we got to be careful with the protective orders. We need a system that take that stuff off our records. If it's not founded,
absolutely,
you shouldn't be able to go in and say, oh yeah,
just search someone and yeah, I agree. How has the political machine had an influence in your race?
I've always been up against the political machine, and and I learned about the political machine the first time I ran. I ran in 2014 for the first time. I never stopped running since then. Once I understood the machine, once I understood that I wasn't taking on an opponent, that I had no idea who he was, I was taking on a system. I did my own research, did my own investigations. That's what I do, my trade. and I've got a greater understanding of the machine, the quote-unquote machine. And the machine is just basically people behind the scenes who control our elections by way of money.
Absolutely.
They pick
Developers.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it out there if you wasn't gonna say
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But
And it's not hard to tell who are the status quo candidates because their signs are with the
I would
developer.
even say some churches. But,
Yeah,
I mean, that's a whole nother topic.
it's a whole nother topic, yeah.
Yeah,
But the machine has controlled us for a very long time, and it's really sad.
It
That,
is.
Yeah, because we can't.
And
I don't think I have learned that doesn't go on anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's just a man figuring out how to, almost like how you control the black people. This is how we do it. We're going to put the most unqualified people in place. We're going to spend as much money as we can so we make sure we have the people in place that we can control and tell them what to do.
Absolutely. For my race, it was the sports betting.
Oh,
They had a huge, huge, huge amount of money invested into all of the races at that time.
Oh, man.
And that was...
They're going to have a huge amount in this one because I'm going to make them break the bank whenever I step in. Spend it all up.
Amen. I have two more questions for you, but to speak just quickly on that, are you planning on doing a sample ballot?
I haven't thought that far. I think in this county, I guess sample ballots are a part of the game, so to say.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm not. Well, I haven't even printed any formal literature yet. I just did some light stuff. I haven't printed my literature, but I don't think I'll do a sample ballot. Now, I could be on other people's side. I don't know, but I don't think. I know I'm not going to generate any sample ballots. Let me just say that.
Thank you, and thank you for that level of just. I don't even know if you want to just call it honesty, but just caring about false information getting out to the public, because it's not that, you know, one sample ballot could be correct and then 30 of them are wrong. It's just people just don't know which ones are which.
They don't.
And
that's what it's designed to do,
so,
keep us confused. My latest hashtag, honest sheriff. Hashtag honest sheriff.
Thank you. So what is your take on Governor Hogan's refund the police plan?
Alexis, that's a great question. Refund the police. I think that, let me just say this. I never supported the idea of defunding the police. I think that a functional police department, a functional law enforcement agency actually needs more funding.
Yes.
I do not support pouring funds into something that's already broken. And we've learned now that most of the culture of law enforcement is broken. So I don't think that you continue to pour money into a broken system. But ultimately, when I see myself as the next sheriff, and we have great recruiting programs, cadet internships, co-op programs, and we function like any good functioning government, and we breed our own good law enforcement officers, that's going to require additional funding for people to be trained properly. One of the major challenges with just about every law enforcement officer is the training. The training is non-existent when it comes to training the trainers. Training the people who actually make the decision who's going to be sponsored by government in a uniform, a lethal weapon, and law enforcement authority. Those people that are making those decisions, they need formal training. They can't be your friends that you say, oh yeah, Alexis, you're a nice person. Why don't you go recruit law enforcement? You know, why don't you go decide who we're going to pick, because that's how it works right now. And so the type of departments that I would want that's going to require vetting, training, you know, continuous training, it's going to require an adequate amount of funding. And so refunding is a strong word. I don't know. I haven't read much about it other than what the news says. I don't know what the governor actually means by refunding. Did they defund? I don't know. But I think that I didn't support defunding the police. And I support that at some point, even our municipal police departments, I'll be quite candid, you know, the municipal police departments make less money than my security officers make managing federal government buildings. And so there's a problem with that. You got security people, armed security, with a higher salary than certified police officers.
I agree. So. I think that the name was terrible. I think the name was bad. But I think that there is pieces in there that I would support, but not all of it. Right. But I encourage you to look at that.
I will.
And can you tell everyone where they can go to volunteer on your campaign, donate to your campaign, where they can go to find out more information about you?
Yes, please go. Very simple. DaveGrogan.com. Everything you need to know is DaveGrogan.com. DaveGrogan. DaveGrogan.com. We need volunteers. We are a true grassroots organization that need all hands on deck. In fact, Sunday we're having our very first all hands meeting, so I encourage you to visit our website.
Thank you. And information to his website will also be available on thesouloftheword.org. Once his interview has been posted, you're able to click on the link and visit his website. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for your continuous support and work in the community.